A week after two deadly earthquakes devastated Turkey and Syria, the death toll has topped 36,000. Rescuers continue to pull out more survivors from the rubble, but those on the ground are very much aware that time is running out for any possible survivors. Earlier today, rescuers assisted by the SAPS search and rescue dogs pulled an 80-year-old woman from the rubble of a collapsed apartment building in Antakya, Turkiye. eNCA Senior Reporter Dasen Thathiah is on the ground tracking recovery efforts and joins me now. Dasen, I can only imagine the harrowing scenes that you witness day after day as these recovery efforts and the rescue efforts continue. Can you give us a sense of what's been happening today and how many victims you've seen that were rescued from the rubble?
Well, Andy, finally, I guess I can share with you and our viewers some good news. Again, I use that term loosely because there's very little good that can come out of these earthquakes that has almost destroyed most of the cities that we've been in. 10 provinces that are affected, but nevertheless there were survivors that were found today. One of those was that 80-year-old that you mentioned, with the assistance of the SAPS canines that had come here as part of the Gift of the Givers mission to Turkey after those earthquakes. But apart from that, just a short while ago, probably about 2 hours ago, just before we left the area, there was another survivor that was rescued. That all happened very quickly. Those that were in that area had rushed to one corner of a collapsed apartment block, and they had told rescuers that they could hear something. It all probably took about 30 minutes, and in that time there was a man that was taken out and taken to an ambulance and taken away, also alive, and he will be treated in hospital. And at the time that we left that scene, we were told that there were possibly others that were trapped there, including children. And while all of this was happening, the family members were gathered outside, and you can imagine what was going through their minds at that time, because it was literally a situation of life and death, because they didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know if the efforts to get them out would be fast enough to ensure that they came out alive. So we're going to have a discussion around that. I've got to my right Ahmed Baum from the Gift of the Givers. I've got to my left Martin Ban, who's a canine handler. I want to start with you, Martin, because the dog, the canine, was instrumental in that discovery today. So let's go back to the scene where that 80-year-old was discovered, and just talk to me about how it came to be and the role of your canine in that process.
Okay, well, good evening. We went out with the Oman team, and they react to sightings or what's the name of live victims. So we were at the one building, and then one of the people that was, I think, from the other rescue teams or the Turkish team that was busy at the one scene asked us if we could maybe assist, because they think there might still be a live victim in the adjacent building. So I went out with my canine, and I searched the area. My dog indicated at a spot, and they started opening up. And while they were busy opening up where the dog indicated, they started hearing noises from inside.
What were those noises like?
They said it was somebody calling for help. And then they opened up, and they literally found this old lady in a cavity that formed. Obviously, the way the rubble fell, it formed a cavity, and she's actually 90 years old. Her son came and spoke to us a little bit later, and she's got a heart condition. So absolute miracle that she survived so long. Yeah, but anyways, so they took her out of this cavity where she was sitting, and she said that there was somebody else also adjacent from her, but she wasn't too sure if he was still alive, because she heard him coughing through the course of the night. Yeah. Well, obviously what she thought was the evening, since she couldn't see anything. So, but yeah, absolute miracle. And it's like you said earlier, you know, certain rescue dogs, I think, plays a vital role in an earthquake situation like this. Yeah. You know, it's not always a pinpoint accuracy. But
what is the type of area within which it could potentially locate someone?
Look, it all depends on the different let's say a building collapses, it forms cavities and voids. So what happens is the wind will travel through, and the dog will pick up the strongest scent at a certain area. It's not to say that the victim will be at that area, but you've got more or less of an idea whereabouts, you can make your search area so much smaller. Instead of spending hours and hours working from one side to the other side and hoping you find something.
Just out of interest, before I speak to Ahmed, I wanted to find out, with this woman that was found with the aid of these dogs, how was she surviving there? Did she have any access to food or water that you knew of?
No, actually, there was nothing with her. There was no water, no food. She literally survived by the grace of God, I would say, because she had nothing. And for 8 days, being under that, hoping, praying, somebody would find her. So it's a total miracle.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Ahmed, I think you and the team have been out every day since we got here, and today was the day that I guess you really got what the team really wanted, and that was to get someone out alive, because ultimately that was the reason for coming here. So based on this, and now that you have found this, what is going to be the plan over the next day? I did hear you say that there's going to be a time where the search and rescue efforts will have to stop.
That's correct, Dasen. What's happened now is we report to SCC here, which is a control center that guides all international teams and USA teams that are based here where we are. There's close to about 12 or 13 that based where we as the South African team is. And what happens is, as the days go on, USA and search and rescue can continue for around 10 days, which they normally do continue. And every day, finding a live patient diminishes, especially in situations and environments like this. You've seen the weather here as well. Yeah. It drops to negative degrees. If someone's been living like that, hypothermic, dehydrated as well, under that rubble. And just like Martin said, it's a miracle. This 80-year-old lady survived at that age, and she managed to withstand all of that. It's really a miracle and a grace of God, What's happened is, what SCC has indicated that from tomorrow, they're going to really do what we say, search operations. It's going to be the last day for search and rescue, where you'll be going out looking for live patients and then coming back and doing searches. From there onwards, what they're going to be doing now is they're moving on to the next phase of searches. It's more like body recoveries. So they're bringing in big machineries. As the buildings are mostly high-rise here, they're going to break the buildings down and they're going to collect all the rubble and get that cleared out now. So that's the next phase.
That's a scary thought, isn't it? Because it means that the window has really narrowed. It literally means that any possible survivors have a day left to be found.
That's true, because once the big machineries come in with the vibrations, the buildings are already cracked, the foundations are destroyed, so little vibration, like you've seen when we had these tremors and we had secondary collapses. So if you're going to have these vibrations happen, most of these buildings are going to collapse, and those survivors that might be still there, it's almost now 9-10 days, they'll be weak, every day they become much more weaker, so they cries and it become much more fainter, and they're going to be killed by the secondary fall or the secondary collapses that's going to be happening, So the chances of finding survivors really diminishes.
Well, that's a horrible, horrible thought even. I know that the mission here with the Gift of the Givers is coming to a close, but one of the questions that's been asked, even particularly with me, with some of the people that have been following us, is, we've been very focused on the efforts in Turkey, but Syria was also affected. And what's been the kind of input there from the Gift of the Givers, if any, and the assistance? Because we haven't really heard as much about it for obvious reasons, because of the dynamics in that country.
Yeah, we've got our Al Rahma hospital that's based in Darkush, which is not far from here in the Idlib province, about 100 kilometers. We actually traveled through Hatay and flew from here, or traveled here towards Syria, and found Darkush during 2013, myself and Dr. Imtiaz. And that's where we established Al Rahma Hospital, which has been running since 2013. But our teams there are really working 24/7 all the time, because they're getting casualties there that are about 300 to 400 casualties daily. And a lot of emergencies, because a lot of help is not reaching Syria due to the politics and all of those things, But our teams as well in Syria have formed a search and rescue team, and comprising of our Syrian volunteers that are there. They've been going out to the areas. They've been actually finding people alive in the last few days and bringing them through to the hospital for treatment as well. But as you mentioned, it's just a lot of delay in aid getting or assistance of this magnitude like what we're having in Turkey and Syria. And the impact has also been great in Syria, just like how we're seeing these images here in Turkey. And I mean, Syria going through its civil war and now an earthquake of this magnitude.
Really a double blow.
Can imagine what they're going through, and the weather. And we look at the conditions the people are going through.
No, thank you very much for your time, Amit Bamde from the Gift of the Givers. Anli, you know, this is a part of what's become a ritual here at this camp at the Thathiah Stadium. The team normally gets together, they have a debrief, and remember, it's they're dealing with a lot throughout the course of the day. They also need to strategize for the next day and come up with a plan. So this is how we've normally been ending each day. It's time to reflect, a time to plan for the next day, and it's obviously, as Ahmed mentioned, it's freezing cold here, and every time we sit here, we always wonder, what is it like for those that have been left displaced? And that's millions of people that have been left without a home after the earthquakes. Some of them are in tents, others have not yet have help reach them yet. So there's a lot to be done, but in this week, the Gift of the Givers mission will draw to a close.
Thank you very much. eNCA Senior Reporter Dasen Thathiah in Antakya, Turkey.